Well, here we are with, do you go by Sam or Samuel?
Well, most people call me Sam in English. Most people in Germany call me Samuel.
Interesting cultural difference, huh? Are you from Germany?
Yeah, yep. Born and raised near Frankfurt, Germany. So right in the middle, dead center.
Okay. My cat is also here, as you can probably see.
Lovely.
I wanted to start out by just hearing your origin story in terms of crypto and this decentralized social ecosystem. How did you find these things?
Well, I found my way into crypto more by like coincidence. In like 2016, I bought a graphics card, and the prices were just skyrocketing like a few months after I bought it, which meant that all of a sudden I could have technically resold that thing for a few bucks, but I wanted to play video games. But like watching hardware YouTubers and like reviewers talk about it, I thought, "Oh, what's this like crypto mining thing?" And after like the fourth video of people making money mining, I was like, okay, let me try. I didn't actually manage because back at the time you just only had the terminal. I didn't actually manage to continuously mine to the same wallet. So I was like, wait, I actually don't see my money. Like, what is happening here? Like, what's this bullshit? And then 4 years later, with NFTs, two people I followed dropped their projects, and I joined one community there, like also a German one. We had community calls each week. And after a while, I just started explaining the tech to people. And then I was like, wait, okay, I actually should learn what this tech really is about. And then I got into like decentralization and like Ethereum properly. I built a few smart contracts, and that's how I then fell deep.
You have a like Farcaster ecosystem consultancy, right? Is that
That's correct.
explain that?
That's correct. In 2019, I started doing web design because, well, we were sitting in school actually, and we were just figuring out, okay, how can we actually make money? It's like two of us in IT class, how can we make money? Well, we didn't come up with any great ideas. So one of us was just like, okay, Yannick, actually, my friend was like, well, just we can make web pages for local businesses. We should be able to get that to work. We did. Then COVID hit. So sales all of a sudden, like you can't sell to a small business if they're facing existential risk. Like one thing you learn is you can only sell food and shelter to somebody who's facing an existential crisis. We were neither selling food nor shelter to those businesses. And then I went to Zurich, started computer science at ETH in Zurich, funny naming. And there I stumbled into project management more because one of our web design clients just liked the questions I asked so much that he just brought me full on for one of the projects. So then at the same time, 2020, me stumbling into NFTs, then I was also doing a lot of consulting and freelancing. Through the Ethereum side, I came into Farcaster. And that's how that business then started because it's such natural for me to do consulting and freelance. So
So it's
it
like a
started from there.
couple different threads in your life like wove together at the same time.
Yep, yep.
My naughty cat walking around the counter. Well, I guess I'll just
Kind
have
of
to.
feels like Clinton with Louis Rossman, if you're familiar with that channel.
Yeah, I just cats. She knows that she's not supposed to, but that doesn't matter to her.
Actually, I got a text from my mom early last week where she kind of like told me like it's kind of nice how you developed. I was like, thank you. It was such a nice text. It was really heartwarming. But I also was like, okay, I know how I was as a kid, like a younger adult and kid, and still am to this day. I just like tame myself.
You tamed yourself, is that what you said?
I actually do believe that I haven't materially changed since I'm around 16 because I just put some restrictions on myself and
Mm.
I'm trying to or like no, I'm actually not trying. I'm actually like actively removing a lot of them, which is a little interesting to say the least. But you kind of realize as you grow in society that you aren't supposed to do certain things.
Yes.
So yeah, there's one cool story about one friend of mine. He never did anything like too audacious in school. And he always tells them the story where we actually barbecued in class, like barbecue, like fireplace, but like we were just like in the schoolyard, like outside, just outside of the schoolyard doing a barbecue. And then we took all of the food inside of the class because we were running late because we just like the actual grill, we just couldn't like put it out fast enough because we didn't bring water and we were like, whatever. We didn't really like think it through. We just barbecued outside because we wanted to barbecue outside. And like that's like one of the few stories he's able to tell from his school years because he was sitting next to us. Otherwise, he was just too tame, and we did a lot of that thing.
You got up to lots of hijinks, huh?
There's
Funny, that doesn't really fit the stereotype of Germans as being like very well behaved.
I was just bored in school. Like I literally was bored. In that class, I was like literally known for like breaking up that class. And like, the only reason I didn't get thrown out every single week because I actually like also translated. It was an English class. I also kind of translated the vocab for the teacher. And every time she needed somebody to actually advance the topic, and she knew that she could just pick. Like I just had my hand raised every single time. I was just like laying back, saying like this, and literally like I knew that she would pick my friend if he raised his hand. So I literally told him what to say. And even like when he was asking a pronunciation or whatever, he wrote down what I told him so he could just read it off, asked about pronunciation, and he actually improved his grade by like, in Germany we have points at that stage end of school from like 1 to 15. He went from like barely passing but to improving actually like 2 or 3 points just through that.
So you civil attacked your professor.
We had a lot of fun.
Schoolboys. Circling back to the Farcaster ecosystem, I'm curious, like what are the tools that you use the most when you're building projects for your clients?
I'm actually surprised. I'm building way too many front ends. It's like whatever you can do to build a web page. And why am I saying like too many front ends? It's like my background is digital penetration testing, security, backend stuff, writing smart contracts. My like front end experience is like limited to Farcaster stuff, which is cool because now we have AI. So like thinking through the data flow and actually making sure the program is structured properly is now way more important than just being able to put a nice spinner. You have to imagine the spinner. That's what's important now. But yeah, it's like a lot of web technologies like React and those. Like that's the most technology. Sometimes it's not even a lot of Farcaster. It really depends what you want to build.
Is there anything you've been working on recently that stands out as like particularly interesting or particularly fun?
Oh, I'm like currently working through like Supercast and building out a wallet there. Like it's now called Super. It's like a Farcaster client. The idea there to build a wallet is, well, actually like Instagram, for example, doesn't have a wallet. It's like, well, you could just kind of limit it by their ad spend. And like there's a shop, but it's not like full on open. Whereas if you now put a wallet inside of your social app and now you have frames, so like anybody can build an app that utilizes that like in-game like currency, so to say, like in-app currency. Well, now you open up a full-on world. Building that out is a lot of fun.
Yeah, you can in theory have like in-feed Shopify type of things.
Well, that is already happening on TikTok and Instagram, but it gets way more fun if you open all of the crypto apps. It's like you can now have games that directly tap your credit card, so to say, in like American language. Well, I played Counter-Strike for countless hours. I'm close to 4,000 hours. Most of those were spent during school, so I actually like haven't been too active the last few years. And I poured a bunch of money into that. It's like also one of my best investments, actually, if I were to sell.
That reminds me of Vitalik famously coming up with Ethereum in part because of his WoW character. Like something he had that belonged to his WoW character got taken away. He was like, "This is bullshit."
It's super interesting. One of the Counter-Strike skins that I have was very popular, but not the most popular. In Counter-Strike Go, in like the version from 2012 to I think 2022. And then they changed the game to say like Counter-Strike 2 and they reworked the lighting. And so all of a sudden, everything that kind of like was glowing during light, it just became way, way, way nicer, and that's now the most popular. So kind of like that skin value doubled overnight from like one update they shipped, whereas the other ones just kind of like went down a little bit.
So as a gamer, what are your thoughts on kind of the current state of like crypto gaming or, like NFT gaming? Because it seems like it hasn't really like clicked yet.
Well, there's one thing in the gaming community, and that's we hate NFTs as like the collective gaming industry because how they were used a lot of times is just a scam. It's like the only exposure you have if you're a gamer to NFTs is, well, oh fuck, there's another one launching a cash grab.
This kind of applies to the whole industry, actually.
This is most of the industry.
Yeah.
So that is a fair reputation that NFTs have, and then most of the time you don't go deeper into the technology because why would you? It's like you saw the playbook four or five times. Why would you actually go deeper, right? You would have to have somebody do a successful other playbook for you to actually look deep. And in gaming, that hasn't happened because one, the incentive for somebody like Epic Games, who has like with Fortnite or Counter-Strike even, like Counter-Strike is a $1 billion in-game ecosystem. That's again, it's like a single game, $1 billion ecosystem. That's more than a few countries.
They don't want to make it portable because why would they?
Oh, they're making 10% every single sale that happens in the Steam market, And if we just go by numbers, we can probably assume that's like a 80-20 distribution. It's like, let's say like 80% of sales actually happen in the Steam market. Well, that's like they're making like hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, every single year from one game. Valve is. Well, why would you open that up to crypto where you would then have third-party marketplaces that you already have with Counter-Strike, and they at times try to restrict it? Why would you open that up? It's like from the game publisher, indie studios would be a good fit because they need the additional money that comes from the liquidity. The big studios don't. It's like, why would they?
With the indie studios, it's such a big cultural problem. Like, because as you said, people's association with NFTs is just like someone's trying to rip me off.
And
Which
as
is, like you said, a deserved reputation.
Oh, and by the way, as an indie studio, why would I spend a bunch of time making blockchain technology work when I can have a database, have my asset in there? The actual end user doesn't really care anyways because there's no ecosystem built around portability. Interestingly enough, though, Counter-Strike skins are reproduced in Minecraft, for example. It's like if there's literal Minecraft servers making like thousands of dollars every single month by hosting Counter-Strike in Minecraft. So like the kids playing Minecraft, the parents allow them to play Minecraft, then actually play Counter-Strike inside of Minecraft with their friends. And they actually, on those servers, can buy the same skins that you have in Counter-Strike. So they're buying for like $10, what in Counter-Strike would be a $100,000 skin.
That is bizarre. I mean, it's sort of in a way, it's a type of composability, just very janky.
You would say in the NFT community, you would say right-click and save. So it's like right-clicked and saved outside of Counter-Strike, inside of Minecraft. Mm-hmm. You do realize that you don't have ownership. It actually doesn't matter. Like that kid has ownership, it sees it on its screen, on the Minecraft server, so that is all that matters to him.
About provenance.
As a collector, you do though. That's why the skin in Minecraft isn't worth anything. But if it's like in a Steam inventory, so like certified provenance by Steam, like Valve, the company, the one giving out Counter-Strike, well now it's worth $100,000.
There are $100,000 skins?
Oh, yeah.
That's mind-blowing. I mean, it's no different from there being $100,000 NFTs, so it really should
go full on bananas. There's a single sticker, like a sticker that you can put on the skin. By the way, the skin has no function in game besides looking cool. Mm-hmm. And only you can see it, or the teammate playing with you, or if you actually die, the gun drops to the enemy, then only they can pick it up. So it's mostly for you. It's mostly a flex, or you're just like playing with it, or you're a collector. There's literal stickers, just like stickers you put on that skin that are worth around $100,000. It's one of them. A few of them are worth tens of thousands of dollars because they're from like 2014, 10 years ago, none exist anymore, and nothing is really that cool, and they now have also the status.
It's interesting that NFTs are like such a perfect use case for this on a technical level, but the economics are not there for the people who are actually running these systems.
Well, you would actually say that to integrate blockchain technology, it would be easier and faster because you don't have to run all of the infrastructure to run payment processing for all of it. And the user could bring their funds. Well, none of those users actually has blockchain funds. Mm-hmm. For Counter-Strike, there's literal exchanges and betting sites supporting crypto payments, but it's only those. And most of the gaming community actually says, well, I can only bet with crypto here. They go to the other ones where they can put in their credit card. Like there's a huge onboarding problem. It's like a chicken and egg problem. And why would the developer try to solve the chicken and egg problem if they already have a chicken and egg problem by getting people into the game?
You've been working on this a little bit, right? Like onboarding people, or you've kind of been doing some Farcaster marketing, freelance, but more like just on your own, right? Like going out and videos.
It's, like for me, what's most interesting is in 2017, end of 2016, probably, January 2017, around that, I started making some videos as a challenge with my friend because I watched a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk when he did like daily vlogging style stuff, and he was always saying like, oh, there's no excuses, just start. And a friend of mine thought, okay, with my little iPhone SE, like worst camera in the iPhone lineup, this was like fully pixelated. In 2017, he was like, oh, you can't vlog on that. Casey Neistat and all of them use proper cameras. Like, no, you can't. And I was like, oh, shut up. So back from then, the last, what's it now, almost 8 years of my life are on video for more or less. And then I started getting into fitness, did fitness content, and now I'm just doing content again. On one hand, I just love telling people how things work on detail and just giving them new perspectives. And on the other hand, it's a marketing play also. I was like, Farcaster is too small for me to just build a really big ass consultancy on top of just purely Farcaster as it is right now.
Hmm.
So obviously getting the word out, getting people in and being like co-signed with the brand really helps to then people are like, oh no, like you want to drive business results on Farcaster because you want to, currently it's mostly Web3 users, you want to get those, well, here's the guy you need to talk to. And oftentimes I get confused for being on the team. I'm not. Last year I actually put out a post where I'm like, well, my dream job would be like developer relations and just doing what I'm already doing, just like on the team. By now it actually depends.
Yeah.
Running a business is, yeah, like you have all of the caveat that comes with like, okay, you actually put in 40 hours of work, now you get to do 20 or 30 hours more of work because you're now running the business, and then you have people to take care of and all that comes with that and the responsibility. If you're on a team, you just get a paycheck, you have a job to do, cool. You may get some equity, but I just love that thrill. So it's like, well, what can replace that? It's kind of hard to find. And the autonomy that you have from running a business, it's like, well, we'll see. And I'm not in the US, they're hiring US only.
Yeah, I think even if I recall correctly, like Los Angeles only. Maybe that's changed.
No. Horse Facts, for example, is sitting in New York. Tony is in Austin. So they're all across the US. So
They're distributed.
they're fully remote. They have an office in LA, and the two founders, Stan and Varun, sit in LA mostly. Right now there's some situation in LA.
Yes.
But yeah.
Do you feel like Farcaster has a pretty US focused perspective, or is it
Yes.
purely international?
No.
Oh yeah.
Fully US focused. The Farcaster proclaims itself as a sufficiently decentralized network. Decentralized is a term you can Google. Sufficiently is a pure on subjective definition. So what does sufficiently mean? Well, we're kind of like on a spectrum, and you can either say you're decentralized or not. By definition of the word decentralized, if you take like a literal definition of the word, well then if you go sufficiently, well what does that mean? Are we actually decentralized? Are we not? And the definition that they've always used is any two people can join Farcaster and communicate with each other, and that should always be the case. You could spin up your own infrastructure, talk to somebody else that does that without the core team actually like wanting you to do that. They can't censor you in that sense. They may not show it on their client, but they can't hinder you from doing that on the protocol level. This may actually change with a protocol update that is rolling out early 2025, where you have to ask someone to post your message to the network. And because that way, if you only allow a few people to actually write, you can scale way higher. The companies betting most on Farcaster are the core team building it, US company, US investors under US jurisdiction, US people in it, exclusively by their hiring choices. And another company running the infrastructure, it's like building all the APIs that developers use to communicate with it. Well, they're also US funded, US based, US people. So there's one jurisdiction actually governing all the entries into the protocol with just a few people at home, mostly running hubs themselves, or like some other businesses, also mostly US based. Why? Audience mostly US based, team mostly US based, communication mostly focused on US time zones, on US people. Well, so if you take the definition of decentralized, that actually doesn't work. If we have one jurisdiction that is one, so it's singular, and then you take the sufficiently, the play that the team always says, and you can agree or disagree here, is just make it big enough, and then the incentives align for other people in other jurisdictions to come and play. And we'll see how that stacks up. I'm sitting in Switzerland. The company is Germany based. And I'm like legally, I'm German. I have a residency in Switzerland, but I'm like not a Swiss citizen. So I have to play by German laws as a company. But I'm not currently active in going to run that core infrastructure there.
Is this
So
something you've thought about doing?
there's currently I would need way more businesses to build on top of Farcaster for it to make financial sense. Like using the US-based API company for most of the projects makes way more sense financially. The difference being at a like X in price.
That's significant.
And also if you rely on your own infrastructure, that also means you have to do the upkeep. Not saying that it's like a big problem. I've played around with it. We have open source repos on our GitHub to put Farcaster nodes in Kubernetes because Kubernetes is the only thing that will matter eventually for like running it at big scale. We're building towards that. It just like doesn't make sense financially to allocate teams resources on running infrastructure when we can pay $50 a month to access it.
I'm curious. Semi-related topic. I'm curious about your thoughts on the switch over from frames 1 to frames 2 and how there's been kind of a proliferation of frames.
Well, frames v1, for people not familiar, is you have four buttons and an input field with some static image, mostly, in your like social feed. Like imagine scrolling Instagram, you see an image and there's all of a sudden four buttons, maybe an input field on top of it. Frames v2 is you see an Instagram post and there's a button and it opens a web page. It's like your Instagram, it's like kind of like viewing an Instagram ad from the UI. Not that it's ads, but it's like that kind of experience. And now you're on a web page, but on those web pages, you're not logged in with Instagram. On Frames, you could actually be. And now you can connect your wallet if you're in Web3 and do all the fancy stuff we talked about a little earlier. Well, now that is the big change. Actually, both are still supported. We'll see how that plays out in the future. But what I love to see is that now we have high fidelity apps right inside the social feed. One thing we're definitely in is a kind of like indie hacker like phase of it, where it's like early people, early adopters, we're exploring it, we're trying to push the boundaries of it, but there's not $1 million company on it. There's no Zynga of Farcaster frames hasn't happened. Like the user base just isn't big enough for support a clear Zynga.
It really all comes back to that. Like the Merkel has definitely talked about this. Like you just need more people, really, to.
Well, it is true. That's why I'm saying, like, well, we can talk about this efficiently, and I obviously have my thoughts. Like, we talked about the jurisdictions, which to me is the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be like 5 teams, 10 teams. If it's like 3 teams, 3 jurisdictions, we actually now have a situation where 2 of 3 jurisdictions have to agree. So, like, if one jurisdiction bans, there's still 2 alive.
Mm-hmm.
Well, can you actually incentivize people to do that? That's the question. Who's building a business? I actually would probably be one of the biggest businesses outside of the US on top of Farcaster, if I may say so myself. Because Super, the actually biggest cash flowing business, maybe Neinar, the API company, I don't know their numbers, is also there. So those 2 are all US based legally. The founder is in Poland currently, but the company is US based, so it's US jurisdictions.
Yeah, it's a good thing to bring up because, then you have just this one particular set of rules and authorities.
Well, we're 1 week removed from a new president going into office in the US and already changing the whole social media landscape by the biggest company having half of the world on their platforms, changing their policies to all of a sudden reduce the amount of content policing that they do, which before was actually quite active and quite strict. We have China policing every single piece of content that goes out into their media. And we can actively see that by a new AI model that is run by a Chinese company, actively, like, literally typing it out and then deleting as it realizes what it actually wrote out. And, well, if that happens in the US and you just have one piece of law, well,
Yeah. Is censorship resistance something that you've been passionate about that drew you into this whole cryptosphere?
It actually didn't drew me into crypto in itself. Once I entered crypto a little more, it kind of grew on me. I always had a disdain for absolute power.
Mm.
There's an interesting at play with power, especially growing up in Germany. My grandma flew from the Russians. She was born in 42. So you hear stories from people coming back from war, and actually, like, people think, like, people in Germany, like, we're taught all about absolute power and, like, not letting it happen. The whole US actually set up Germany in a way that absolute power is very highly unlikely to happen, just because we had Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
And we think, as German people, we are deeply ingrained with all of that because of school and preventive mechanisms to just hopefully not have that happen again. If you actually go back, though, it's like only 2 generations.
Mm.
Well, 3. Well, technically, some grandparents are still alive that went through it. Most of them are sadly dying out, so it's all of a sudden like you don't really have too many people that lived in that era, but you still have people that were children in that era.
Mm-hmm.
So in Germany, absolute power, censorship, and all of that is actually still like close to all of us. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'm passionate about.
Privacy is, it seems to be something that's just more understood as like a cultural value in the EU, and privacy and censorship resistance.
The EU is a topic that, if you want to go into it, I have a lot of thoughts on it. Technically, even like Germany is really big on privacy. You can see it even more in Switzerland, which the Swiss hate me saying that. But they also sometimes they say that this way. The Swiss say that they're the rich Germans, They wouldn't actually call themselves Germans, but they joke that they're just German but rich.
Uh-huh.
Their banking laws 40 years ago used to be so private that were actually used as a safe haven from anyone. You can kind of see by recent actions that they're now actually like basically a NATO subsidiary. They would never call themselves that. They say that they have neutrality. Watching their actions, you can actually see that is kind of the case. So privacy actually also in the EU doesn't really apply anymore.
Well, every government wants to be able to spy on all of their citizens, basically. But it does seem like the European populace cares more about privacy, per se, than the American.
Once something comes out, yeah. It's like once something comes out, yes. If something doesn't come out, no. We're all using WhatsApp to communicate. WhatsApp is technically end-to-end encrypted, but nobody approves the end-to-end encryption of WhatsApp. It's not like Signal where I can run my own server and actually look at the code and verify, okay, can my Signal that I'm running myself communicate with the Signal that Signal is hosting? Because if that doesn't match up, then well, the encryption actually doesn't match up because it's supposedly encrypted, right? Oh hell, we're all using WhatsApp and we're just praying for it to be end-to-end encrypted. So the Germans are very morally strict in what we say, and we used to be very morally strict in what we do. As we gotten richer and we gotten lazier, frankly speaking, over the last 20 years, that has, well, mostly been, we're now just talking and regulating.
You mentioned the distance that builds up from some of these cultural watersheds as the generations go on. And that's something that is definitely evident in the US also. Like for us, I guess, you would go back to like the Civil War or something, and things change as people are farther away from those events.
Well, the US actually, to my knowledge, with Vietnam being the last big land war that the US was involved in, actually had a war after Germany. So there's people still alive.
On US soil. You have to go back pretty far for that.
World War II, technically, with Hawaii.
Only barely. It didn't
So
affect
the US just is located in a way that there isn't really any threat of war besides a war inside the US with US people. Technically, you could say the US is at war with crime. If you look at all the shootings happening in the US, even in schools, like we do not have that in Europe. We have terror attacks, and we actually have like smaller local events like Christmas markets and all that. So we're starting to get crime. We do not have full-on parts of a city that are war zones.
That's a really interesting way to put it, actually, that it's like a distributed conflict, or it's like a guerrilla conflict in a way, all the different
For sure.
activity.
It's not going against the government as it is right now, but the US actually is in a place where if it continues on the way that it is economically and socio-economically, it may actually get there.
We'll see. The pendulum is swinging back in the other direction again in terms of attitude toward crime, so we'll see what happens.
I'm not here to make predictions. I'm just saying that if you have a lot of people that do not feel that they have anything, that always has been a climate in that those kind of actions would actually come up. We are seeing that in Germany, in that we have a lot of people coming in that can't get work because the legal framework isn't set up for them to do anything, get state funded, and actually just are within themselves, and then, well, they have nothing to do, so what can they do? And if they actually lose the state funding, or they're just like in crowds that are criminal, well, then that is now their life, and that's why we have a lot more crime in Europe. The French Revolution, for example, spun out of people thinking they now have nothing to lose anymore. Germany all of a sudden had nothing to lose anymore when we were conquered, like in the 1800s, 1900s, and then actually Germany came together. The US actually, in the South, all of a sudden like, oh, you have nothing to lose anymore, let's actually like fight a war. It's just not a good situation to be in.
Yeah, it's better for people to have opportunity and to have a happy path to go down, so to speak.
What's interesting though is the US still has the most opportunities though. Because of the system that is so, like, some people would say screwed. The system is so lopsided that you have people that have so much and people that have so little. But actually anyone could technically be one of the people that has so much.
The US is high variance, where like you can get really, really rich or you can be destitute. I guess there are a lot of places where you can be destitute, but it has that like, I mean, in a way it's like crypto,
Yep. No, it actually is. And one mindset difference that you have in the US is people actually believe that they can influence the variance. Whereas in Europe, definitely by now, because we've been so state funded, and that's like public. You can just look at wealth distribution, like, especially redistribution, that we actually more so believe in having stability being part of the mean, which by now, actually, the German mean is so low that we're getting people to rise up again.
Interesting. There's so much more history in Europe, like just in a literal sense. It's been an established like Western polity for so much longer, or the various countries have been established polities for so much longer than America. You have a really different dynamic versus the upstart.
Yeah, well, also what happens in the US is you have a very, very, very long history of the US that just isn't documented and isn't talked about.
That's why I say Western polity.
Because most people that think they're American are actually like European refugees, which also plays into the culture of the variants, because you just had people leaving Europe for whatever reason and trying to really make it, which you can still see in the culture. You can also see a lot of in the US culture that is like slowing down and like people are just content.
Yeah, it's getting more complacent. It's less of a like frontier mentality.
Yep, which has changed potentially if you take what the people that have been elected into office beginning of 2025 say. We'll see how that plays out. Huge parts of it also is like if the US actually can't sustain their social system anymore, which I actually don't know if there actually is a social system. They say they have, I don't know.
I mean, it's very piecemeal. It's state by state. It's a combination. Like there's some federal policies and then there's a lot that it just depends on your state, which is...
In Europe, we definitely can't sustain the social system. Everyone knows it, nobody does anything against it, and nobody publicly says it.
Well, yeah, no politician wants to like reap the short-term like negative effects of like cutting down on benefits when, they're going to be out of office by the time everything is going insane.
Well, that is not to put anything against Merkel, because that's the only chancellor that I actually knew in Germany. But that's kind of what happened. We were really happy with her while she was in office until kind of like the refugee situation. That was the first time when actually people were like, we may actually want to sustain our culture and get those people to work. Can you please like make the legal system a little bit easier to actually get people to work? Like I literally have friends who try to hire people because of legalities.
That's frustrating.
Trust me, it's not even frustrating for the business owner. It's way more frustrating for the person coming into Germany wanting to contribute and then not being able to.
Yeah, there's something cruel about letting people come into the country and then not letting them participate, which is something that the US has also done with, the undocumented population. It is known, or it has been known for a long time that they're coming in, and a lot of like individuals are known, but there isn't a path for them to sort of build equity in society.
Yep.
I don't have strong feelings about immigration either way myself, but I do think that like you should have a clear system one way or the other. Like either people aren't let in or people are let in, and there's a way for them to like build a life. But I'm
appreciating that system in Switzerland. Like the Swiss system is really clear. You come in, you have a Swiss work permit, or you study here, you're cool. You don't, get out.
I think that and then people don't get into the situation where they've built their life here for like decades, but they don't have any like official status. It's just a weird limbo that makes everybody's life harder.
I've come to appreciate that Swiss system and seeing it firsthand, and actually like I'm a beneficiary of that system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an immigrant in Switzerland. It doesn't feel like that because it's like German, basically. Mm-hmm. There's not really that big of a culture shock. The only culture shock you get is Swiss people are way more closed than German people. It's like trying to really come in and then learning the language. You would think it's German, it's actually not. It's like, well, if you think you can speak English and then you go to the south of the US and you try to talk to a Texan, you don't speak the language that they speak. So you will stand out as an outsider. That's always going to be the case in Switzerland. Yeah, that's a lot of politics and geopolitical events. The most important actually is that the world population isn't growing.
Yes, that is really going to change things.
It's the first time in history that the world population will not be increasing.
And it's everywhere too. It used to be just developed countries, but now everywhere.
I actually looked it up today because I had this conversation today. And the only area and region is like just below the Sahara, the African countries. Those are the only ones who are actually increasing in population. Even India is below reproduction rate, and they just grew to be the biggest like populous country most populous country in the world. If you look at that and take that for what it is, it means that the consumer is going away.
Mm-hmm.
In being this like young 10 to like 18 to 35-year-old, it's shifting to be a 60 to 80-year-old driven society, which we never had because those people died out.
Yes. And it's going to be a really weird dynamics. They have like different incentives, different, also just like different levels of risk tolerance. And
looking at Germany, like the voters for the last like 3-4 elections, all voters that like actually decided who got into the national government was always driven by like social policies for the elderly.
yeah, it's kind of the same in the US. And that comes back to, well, actually, that's been argued to be the fundamental flaw of democracy is that at some point the populace figures out like, oh, we can just vote for money for ourselves, and then it's not sustainable anymore.
Oh, but then the populace figures out that it isn't sustainable anymore and votes for a prosperous life. So it's actually self-policing in that sense. Then
Maybe.
there is pain in the self-policing, though. You need to get to pain for the populace to realize. And that's one thing I've realized about Germany. I was really mad for a while about Germany, and now I'm at like, let's actually get to peak pain first.
It's better to take an ecological perspective and to kind of zoom out like that, because otherwise you just get frustrated. Like, people are never going to like see reason. Like, humanity just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, I also like, I would love to think that I'm a reasonable person. I'd love to also be a very practical person and just take things for what they are. I still am human though. There's a lot of emotion involved.
Yes. And I mean, there's a perspective from which our emotions are reasonable. Like, it's an ancient, evolved system for allocating our attention and energy, is our.
Which actually makes the human way more predictable than they think they are.
That's what economics is about largely. It's like, how do psychology and money intersect?
Well, crypto is the perfect playbook for that because it's mostly unregulated. Even though we think it's over or underregulated, depending on which side you are on. If you're a business trying to incorporate crypto, you think it's underregulated or overregulated in terms of you actually think you're falling under financial asset protection. Well, and there's no clarity, if you just build something in the space anonymously because it's permissionless, then you actually like realize that it's really underregulated in some parts. Which for a permissionless system is properly regulated. Like no regulation is proper regulation. There will be social norms, which actually is what laws are, and rules, which kind of like goes back to me being in school, right? Like there is technically no regulation disallowing us from doing barbecue outside of class, but there's a kind of a social contract that you shouldn't walk in with like 2 big sausages and a steak in a bun into class.
Then you become the cause of regulation is
Yes.
when the social norm needs to be codified.
I actually haven't been the cause of regulation in the school that I was in. I do not think I am. I have been, actually, like, this is really funny. I actually have gotten so close to what then was the school's, like, not psychologist, but like the person that you go to and has to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
The mediator, you could call them. I've actually gotten so close to them that we were like on a first name basis, just by me being there so often. So they already knew me. So when we were starting in with like new people, they kind of already knew how it went.
You were a frequent flyer, huh?
Yeah, it even got so far that at one point, like a friend of mine was like, I actually don't want to attend class. I'll just, like, you're alone against like 4 girls. Let me just come in. It's going to be fun. We got cookies. Yeah, they always had cookies in there. And because one thing I never did, and I never lied. So every time I did something, I was like, yes, I did that. Meaning I was sitting there always, and she knew that, like always saying, this is the truth and this is like all of it. I may have like not been too detailed about some situations, obviously, but I've never lied.
So you were chaotic, but reliable.
Yes, and I don't repeat myself. And if I do, it's accurate. Meaning like I don't go into circles, I just say, no, this is what I did. And if then the situation, like they try to come from a different angle, it's like, this is what I did. Meaning the person realized, okay, no, this is literally like, this is a full-on like story that like seems sound. Whereas the other ones try to like fiddle around. It's like, oh, you can't really take that serious. So I won a lot of those arguments.
That is funnily another parallel to crypto where reputation is everything because they're, the other authorities are either untrusted or overly harsh, as you said, kind of depending on your perspective.
Well,
where you're playing.
Depends on what you do. Crypto is fully verifiable.
Mm-hmm.
So why would reputation be everything when I can just literally write code, put that code out there for everyone to see, and have that code just work? Look at Tornado Cash, for example. Look at other privacy solutions. Look at Ethereum itself. Okay, the reputation of Ethereum makes it so that people go there if they want the incredibly neutral layer. But if you just look at the properties of it, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, whatever blockchain you want to take, there's certain properties that it has that you can decide on if it's the right solution for you.
Well, the properties are what creates the reputation, and then they kind of end up feeding back into each other.
You can say that about a human too. The characteristics of a human repeated over time in consistency make up a reputation.
Yeah. Well, and in the case of, say, an individual developer, their track record is what builds their reputation, and then they can leverage their reputation to build toward future things by, like, getting investment or sale or all sorts of things.
Interestingly, though, for a developer, similar to like this like US mindset, or especially in crypto where like you can just literally do anything, you can have no track record and tomorrow be the biggest thing in town just because you built something that a lot of people actually have demand for.
Yeah, that's when it goes in the other direction, or that's how you establish your reputation in the first place, is by doing something cool.
Or just by being in one place for a long ass time and just then being known for something. So there's those two. Also, you can lose reputation in one day.
Mm-hmm.
In 1 second, in one instance.
You can burn your reputation. People do that sometimes.
I would actually say that most of the crypto industry does that every single day.
Yes, especially when it comes to the reputation outside of crypto. That's a tough one.
When people ask me, are you working in crypto? I'm like, no, I'm building on top of the technology. My answer is I'm never in crypto. I'm attending Ethereum and like crypto events and conferences, yeah, because that's where my customers are. That's where a lot of friends that I have go and gather. So I go there. But I never describe myself as working in crypto. There's a clear difference between somebody saying they work in crypto and somebody that work with crypto technology. The people working with crypto technology, they care about that technology and the properties that it has. The people working in the crypto industry, a lot of times they play status games, or they just haven't found a way to properly describe the properties, or they may just use the name crypto industry because that's what they want to associate themselves with. Like, all of them are fine. I'm just saying there's a variety. If you go onto the dTech webpage, there's a reason it literally says like development, like boutique, whatever, and talks about Farcaster and all of it. Actually, like, yeah, it mentions some crypto projects and whatever. It's a marketing site, but it actually doesn't say we're in this like crypto industry or whatever. So I couldn't care. Like, Farcaster itself is a social platform, so I'm technically more in the social media era than I'm in crypto. It happens to be that there's a lot of crypto users and crypto companies, so that's who we have to cater to. But the most interesting stuff built on social hasn't been crypto. It's mostly been either games or social interactions. Yes, you can put the financial layer in there because you have it because of crypto, but it's always been the people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. It's always been the people, and that's, I mean, that like Farcaster needs its community to be interesting. Like, just the infrastructure without anyone using it is not interesting.
Well, take it that way. If you're a little kid and you're going to the playground, the infrastructure on the playground is what enables you to go there. But if there's no child playing, then you're alone, and at one point in time that gets boring. If you have a lot of children playing there and all of those children are cool, you stay there. If there's a lot of children playing, you don't fit in, well, either you make your own circle by a few others who don't fit in, and that's how you get clusters and like quote unquote bubbles on social media and in like networks. So if there's nobody, then you just leave.
Unless it's really, really fun, but it's hard for it to be really, really fun without anyone else there, which is the chicken and egg problem.
But also, like, if you go there and there's a bunch of people and that's not your people and you don't like it, it can't be fun for you.
Mm-hmm.
So it may look like a lot of fun. It actually isn't. It's like one thing I was talking about, like me, like pulling away some of the like restraint I put on myself. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I tried to fit in at times. And I'm like, well, you like when you were like 14, 16 years old, you didn't care about fitting in. It's like, why do I care now? Well, because when I was like 18, 19, all of my friends were like going to parties, drinking alcohol. I never drank alcohol. So when they got too drunk and the like community itself wasn't fun, I just didn't fit in. I never started drinking. I just at one point realized, oh fuck, like I'll just leave that party. And it's the same now where I'm like, if the party isn't fun, I'm actually leaving. Where a lot of people try to fit in, and I do have that at times as well. I'm currently marketing to crypto projects with the company, because that's where Farcaster is going. Do I personally like that? I do like the sovereign infrastructure and building financial rails on that, where you're not restricted by a jurisdiction and you have that sovereignty and all that. That's why like the Morpho frame we did is like you can actually, like, anyone in the world can deposit into getting interest, which you can't do in a lot of jurisdictions, and you can do that in just like 20 seconds if you have a crypto wallet. So like, we're building some financial stuff as well, but like I'm saying, like, it's not the defining factor.
I think we kind of feel that way at Splits too. Like the technology and the capabilities of the technology is really what's interesting, and it's frustrating that so much of the industry is just like gambling. I don't know. Sometimes it's entertaining. Like there are aspects of like meme coin frenzy that I find fun, but then it can also just be like nihilistic and depressing.
The depressing part of it is Splits, for example, as just a pure example, not having enough revenue to kind of blend out that other people are making millions every single day out of that.
We don't want to make those millions though. We want to make different, better millions.
Well, you're now classifying subjectively what you think is better millions. In the end, both are millions, and you not making millions. I don't know the Splits financials, right? But out of that statement, you saying you're not making millions right now, why you're looking at that as like a fuck, which
I think it's a
happens with most people.
Long-term trajectory kind of thing. Like if you can cash out from a meme coin that like hits and does well within, less than a year, within like weeks or months. But it's not a long-term foundation.
That's why a lot of attention is there and a lot of people are there.
Yeah.
And that's how it's going to stay until like the one big play comes that just takes the attention to something else. Interestingly, prostitution, gambling are the longest standing running areas of business for humanity. So we as crypto industry and oftentimes saying like, oh, this is just like bullshit, actually discounts those two.
Mm-hmm. Like, if you look at the early state of Wall Street, right? Like it's also beset by like umpteen million scams and all kinds of shady behavior. Similar.
And by the way, now it's just in the background.
Mm-hmm.
It earned its way out of that reputation. Who says crypto can't do that?
Yeah, I think we can. I think it just will take a long time.
By the way, Wall Street today still powers all of our financial action. We just don't think of it as doing it. It's like crypto may do all of that in like the next however much amount of time. And you're building one of the greatest products for coordination on that and enabling that, right? Like when I talk to friends of mine who own businesses and they're like, well, Europe may just be in decline. We may actually don't want to be part of that regulation. Well, Splits is one of the products where I'm like, okay, I can actually show them that there is a way for them to be fully self-custodial and like own their own money. The problem then becomes which currency? Do you actually own your own ETH? Do you own your own Bitcoin? Do you own your own USDC? USDC definitely is, you're back into jurisdiction territory and now you're like sucking up to the US again. So if you're like, well, I actually want to get out of Europe, well, now you can get into the US and you can technically own your own US dollar. Technically, because at the end Circle has the way to freeze you in, or the other stable coins can do. If you own ETH, then you're like, well, I'm now subject to volatility. Do you want that? Do you need that? Can you sustain that volatility? Or do you just lend some like USD against it? How do your financials look like? That solution isn't like fully figured out. Bitcoiners would say one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. I'm still paying in Swiss francs here. And so oftentimes I have to look at that conversion.
Yeah, there are trade-offs. There are trade-offs into all the choices that you make in terms of your financial setup. And the goal is to make it like easier to navigate those trade-offs and to choose what makes sense for you. It's like you said about, choosing what blockchain. You have to look at the underlying properties. You have to look at the underlying properties and then the user base that has been attracted to those properties. Like the culture of Bitcoin and Ethereum is so different. And it's like path dependent, but it's also based on like what those different technologies enable.
Interestingly, though, the only technical difference between the two in the beginning was that one allowed for you to put a program on it and verify it, while the other had one single program that says you can send money around.
Yeah, although with ordinals, that's somewhat changed.
Well, you're now adding data onto that single transaction and you're sending it to yourself. So it's like, well, has it really changed? The way that people look at it and index it has changed. If I'm giving you a single dollar note and I'm painting a picture on that single dollar note, has the way of us using that dollar note changed? Technically, yes. The
Yeah.
core properties, though, haven't changed. It's not fully a programmable layer of infrastructure that you can use, unless you build on top of it as a settlement layer, but then it's not designed for that. So how big can that scale actually go?
Yeah, well, then that circles back to what the community wants and what they're willing to allow into the code base.
We'll see. Bitcoiners say that Bitcoin will never change. In the end, that's a social contract.
Hmm.
Ethereum people say Ethereum is going to adapt and change all the time. It's like one of the clashes between the two. And then in the end, like the 21 million Bitcoin, yeah, it's technically in code, but like all of them are mainly running one or two clients. So if they decided tomorrow that they wanted a 30 million Bitcoin, the argument is that then people would just not accept that, and people would only, like the Bitcoins on the 21 million fork that would very likely come out of it, would then be the ones still worth the whatever equivalent you want to put as a currency against that. We'll
And
see.
arguably, that was proved out during the user-activated soft fork, but that was a long time ago with a much smaller user base.
Also, that's without nation states driving that.
It's fun and exciting, all these new developments.
Well, take NATO. If NATO put all of their financial assets into Bitcoin, then they would own a significant chunk of Bitcoin. If they then forked Bitcoin, they control all of the exits of Bitcoin into a currency that is used in daily exchange mostly. So if then Bitcoiners forked Bitcoin into another Bitcoin, well, now all of a sudden nobody is accepting your new Bitcoin. Well, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, it is having nation states actually be using crypto is definitely going to change things, as opposed to the kind of like, whoa, what is this weird thing that's happening in our backyard? Actually.
By the way, I'm not saying that kind of NATO fork or whatever is happening, or that NATO even has the power to do that. We could at one point figure that out and see. I'm not going to make any prediction on what's going to happen in that case.
It's wise not to make predictions.
It's just always interesting to contemplate those scenarios, because those are the worst cases that we would have to go for if we're talking digital sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
Because then the nation state takeover is just, well, now they own our assets again. So that's something to be aware of and always have in the back of our mind. Because when we say like, oh yeah, it's like fine that we like don't decentralize as much yet, well, there's this like adage of can't be evil versus don't be evil. If you can't be evil, you actually like don't be evil is an advice. Can't be evil is a fact.
A verifiable property.
So we're back at properties.
Yeah. All right, well, I gotta run because my son has speech therapy, but this has been a very interesting and far-ranging conversation. More geopolitical than I expected it to be.
Oh, that's where it went.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk, and well, people know where to find you, samuelhuber.eth. Did I miss, is there...
There's a double L, and my second name is from my great-grandfather.
What is it?
Louis.
Oh, nice. Okay,
He never returned. He never returned from World War II. So my father promised my grandmother to name me after that. So that's where I got the second name. So that's why there's two L's. It's Samuel, another L, and then Huber.
Well, that's a good way to remember it.
Yep. Awesome.
Yeah, well, thank you for talking.
Thank you so much for chatting.